Hi vinyl community, hi music fans, back for another long overdue video, and today I just thought I'd do one on a couple of recent pickups, 3 recent pickups and some records that have been spending a lot of time on my turntable. A mixed bag as always, so let's get to it. First off, and I was so happy to find this, I found this at a boot fair yesterday morning, a record that I've had on CD since it came out in 1995 I think, and that's Red Snapper's Reeled and Skinned, which is a double album consisting of their first 3 EPs, and it's great stuff. I was lucky enough to see them back in, I think it's around about 95, when they played a dance music festival down in Brighton, which was headlined by The Prodigy. And these guys were just in like a small tent at the side. Never heard of them before, and they blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. Because it was a dance music festival, but these guys play real instruments. I don't remember there being any laptops in evidence or any electronics at all, apart from electric guitar. They played double bass, some great acoustic drums, and plenty of flute and saxophone. And this is essentially a jazz album, but it's one where you can see the links to trip hop and the dance music scene. But like I say, it's all acoustic, it's all real instrumentation. And they are a jazz band, or at least they were when this album came out. Their subsequent albums were more electronic. They definitely started to introduce the electronics. But for me, this was their best era, and they're a pure band, an exciting band to see live and very danceable. Really great stuff. Hard to pick out highlights really, because I love it all. There's some fantastic grooves on here. There's some great noisy guitar over the top of the jazz. You get vocals occasionally. I think on track In Deep, Beth Orton, who got known around this time as well for albums like Central Reservation and Trailer Park. She provides the vocals on that one, but most of this is instrumental, and to be honest, all the better for it. Some superb grooves on here, and if you don't know them, check this album out. I'll definitely check this out before you check out their other stuff, because this, like I say, is really organic and it's really exciting jazz. Still going to this day, I think, as far as I know. So check them out. So that's Red Snapper, Reeled and Skinned. Now another recent pickup is, again, an album I've been after for a long time, and I did actually manage to pick up an original copy of this on eBay 3 or 4 years back, which was described as being in near mint condition. I couldn't believe my luck when I managed to get it for a decent price. And when it turned up, it looked like someone had been using it for a chopping board. So that had to go back. And I've been looking for a copy ever since. And I didn't even realise this had been reissued. But it has been. And one of my local record shops had a copy at a really good price. And it's Lenny Kravitz's Circus album. And this has been reissued as a double album. The original was a single album with some bonus tracks on. And it comes on some pretty attractive coloured vinyl. And this is, what would this be? Lenny Kravitz's 4th album. And it's fairly typical of the early sort of style of Lenny Kravitz. It's a mix of Beatlesque harmonies, bit of Led Zeppelin in there, a bit of Hendrix, and it's so good. I've stuck up for him before because I think he gets a fair bit of stick for being too commercial or too what, I don't know, but the cool music press would have you believe that he's a bit of a joke. But I love Lenny Kravitz, and has anyone ever looked cooler on the cover of their album? I'm not sure they have. Hard to pick highlights on here. So many great grooves, great guitar playing. Tunnel vision is really good. Thin Ice is great. Yeah, it's always so good. The Resurrection finishes off the original album. That's a superb track as well. So, yeah, if Lenny Kravitz is your thing, go check this album out. I mean, most people go for the first couple of albums, and this, when I first got it on CD, it didn't hit me straight away. But now I think it's probably my favourite album by him. So definitely well worth investigating. And this reissue sounds really good. You got your lyric inners, like I say, double vinyl, and there's no drop off in quality of those bonus tracks. The whole of the fourth side is bonus tracks. Lenny Kravitz, Circus. The next up is one that was a bit of a punt on my part, definitely a blind buy. It's by a guy called John Dyer, or there are quite a few names credited, but he seems to be the main guy on here. And the album is called Gong Splat. And I sampled a couple of tracks online and then thought, yep, I'll go for that. If it's all as good as that, can't really go wrong. John Dyer plays guitar on here. Some spacey synths and some percussion. There's plenty of stand-up bass on this. It says guitar noodlings, some quite sort of scratchy, psychedelic meanderings. It's noisy at times, has a great groove. It's jazzy, it's psychedelic, and I could imagine parts of it appealing to fans of the Grateful Dead or the Chris Robinson Brotherhood, because there's definitely that jam band sort of feel to it. Particularly on the track, what is it called? Yugoth Travel Agency. So that's a definite jam band type of a track. And then you've also got tracks like the final track, Giedi Prime, which is kind of a cosmic drone. Not much of a groove to that one, but it's all great stuff. All very jazz influenced. Definitely one for fans of the electric, Miles Davis sort of era, Red Snapper again, and cosmic krautrock. And you can't have an album called Cosmic Splat and have it on black vinyl, so this one comes on this particularly fetching kind of gold splatter vinyl. So yeah, blind buy, which turned out pretty good in the end. I shall have to investigate what else John Dyer's done, because this is a decent album. So that's the recent purchases out of the way. Now for some of the stuff that has been getting a lot of airtime in the man cave here. And start with bands that were from Canada. In Britain they were known as Mayo Fist for some reason. I've never quite understood why, or even knew what Mayo Fist meant. But elsewhere they're just known as Fist. And this is, I think, their debut album, Round One. The title would suggest it's their first, wouldn't it? And it's a independent release. And as such, I guess the production's a little bit budget. Could do a bit more money spent on it and a better producer. But it's very much a family affair, this one. The guitar player, Ron Chenia, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He sings as well. Then his brother John plays drums. There's another Chenia credited with the production, and yet another with having provided the artwork, both on the front and the back there. So I reckon money was tight here, and they called in various favours. Obviously a pretty talented and artistic family. And this is a really good album. I really like this. I like Fist's later material, but it's nice to see where they came from, because this is it's a kind of a pomp rock album, I suppose. It borders on symphonic prog occasionally. Let's see, on the track, what is it, Madness? Yeah, second track on side 2, which is an instrumental. it gets pretty symphonic on that. There's not much evidence of the kind of lush harmony vocals that I think this kind of band is crying out for, and which I really love in my American pomp rock. But you know, the hints of it here and there. There's some crunching guitars. But the real star here is a guy called Edmund Egan, who plays the synths on here. And he knocks it out of the park, he really does. Whether it's playing, you know, over the top, overblown pompous synths, or playing the piano, he does a great job, really does. So a more expensive production, and perhaps a bit more work on the vocals, lead vocals as well as backing vocals. This could be a pomp classic, but what is just so charming about it is the scale of ambition on what was obviously a very limited budget. And on later albums, they never quite realised the pomp classic that this could have been, and they branched out into slightly more mainstream commercial hard rock. Still great albums, I've got to say. Try and remember the names of some of the other ones. One was called Fleet Street. There's one called Thunder in Rock, and Hot Spikes, which is a particular favourite of mine, which is nothing like this, and it goes for that slightly 80s electronic ZZ topped Eliminator sound, if anything, but does it much better than ZZ Top did, I think. Okay, the guitar playing may not be Billy Gibbons' quality, but I think the album works better. But that's a completely different kettle of fish to this. So if you like a bit of symphonic pomp rock, bordering occasionally on almost prog, round one by fist. Then I suppose in a similar vein, there's an album by Maria or Mariah, self-titled, and like I say, it's in a similar vein to Fist. There are very strong lead vocals on here though, and the harmonies are absolutely fantastic. They hailed from Chicago. This album came out in 1975, and I suppose inconsistency of sound is the problem, if there is one with this album. There's kind of a mix of the Doobie Brothers, AOR, and pomp rock again, like on the track. Which one is it? Oh, Reunion, last track on the first side. It's a longer track, and it definitely has sort of nods to similar bands of the era from the States, bands like Morning Star and Emperor. So if you're aware of those bands and you enjoy what they do, there's a good chance you'll get off on this album. It does feature some of the worst band portraits I think I've ever seen. Surely a band photo would have been better than those terrible drawings, but hey, front cover's pretty attractive. Give them extra points for that, and the logo's not bad. Featured a guy called Frankie Sullivan on guitar, who would later go on to be a key member of Survivor. Survivor really honed their sounds to eliminate the kind of inconsistency that this album suffers from. Great production on this album. Like I say, if they could have got a more consistent sound, this would have been a genre classic, I think. Possibly one of my favourite tracks on here is Nomad Man, which has that kind of slightly acoustic based Uriah Heep feel to it. So yeah, a lot to get your head around there. You know, Doobies, Uriah Heep, AOR, pomp rock, but it's all in that kind of ballpark, and is well worth checking out for people who are into this kind of stuff. Mariah. Now here's one I picked up in a junk shop in France about 3 years ago. I hadn't heard of the band before, but the album cover just made me know I had to pick it up. I think it's about €8 I paid for it. And it's the band is Zen, and the album is called Hair. And you can see the slight play on words they've got there, the visual joke. Not sure I approve of bald jokes, but there you go. But this is a great album. It's baroque psych pop, very much in that kind of Beatles Left Bank sort of a vein. I think it's pretty difficult to track down these days. So I was very chuffed to have found my copy. Now it's got great production, really good songs, all originals I think, apart from two which are from, inevitably, from the musical Hair. They do a good job of those, but the originals are great too. Musically, like I say, it's baroque pop. There are bits of flute and clarinet on here to add to that slightly baroque sound, and can't recommend it highly enough, really. The best tracks are probably Tiny Little Bee, and there's a track called Don't Try Reincarnation, which adds cello and trumpet to the mix for a really nice baroque pop sound. And the track Please Accept My Invitation is baroque pop of the highest order, it really is. Features a short acid fried guitar solo. It sounds a bit like something that some of the more adventurous power pop bands of the 90s would try, people like Wonder Mints and Jellyfish. So those of you who watch my channel regularly will know how much of a fan I am of those bands, so this ticks a lot of my boxes. Great psychedelic baroque pop. Hair. And next up is an album by a guy who used to be in The Millennium and then in Krabby Appleton, who are both great bands in their own right. And then he went solo. It's this guy, Michael Fennelly, and his album Lane Changer, which came out in 1974. And this, again, is a really enjoyable album. He sings and plays guitar on here. Does a great job of that. And it sounds like a cross between the James Gang. There's some Led Zeppelin elements, some prog rock keyboards, some bluesy numbers, and it makes for a great all-round package. It really does. And interestingly, on this album, on pretty much every track, he's backed by the majority of members of Argent, and you in fact get a fantastic Rod Argent Moog solo on which track is it? Dark Night, and that is a sensational track. Really good album, well worth checking out. I've been trying to get hold of a reasonably priced copy of his second solo album, name which escapes me for now, something to do with Bed. I know Bed is in the title. I'll stick it up here. But yeah, Michael Fennelly, big talent, and do not sleep on this if you see this in the bargain racks, because you're likely to see this one cheap. It's the one that crops up most regularly of his solo albums, that's for sure. And a lot of you will already know The Millennium, their Kurt Burcher produced classic album, and Krabby Appleton, who produced two really good sort of hard rock albums. Couple of albums they put out which are really good as well. In fact, the second of those I'm still trying to find. So definitely one for those who like a bit of hard rock mixed with some blues and some acoustic balladry. Michael Fennelly. Now, those of you with long memories might remember me raving about a band called Edgewood sometime last year. An album I've been after for a long time, Ship of Fools. It's not even called Ship of Fools. Why do I always call it that? What was it called? Again, I'll stick it up there. But a great progressive album. And the album I'm going to show now I've had for years, and didn't make the connection between two albums, but this guy, D Beaver, plays keyboards in Edgewood and previously played in the Gentrys, sort of a garage rock band of the 60s. So D Beaver and his album Combinations, fair bit of ringwear there. It's that kind of cover that picks up ringwear really easily. But he's a keyboard player, and a really fine keyboard player at that. And this is, I guess I'd describe it as sort of progressive Beatlesque pop, really, which again, right up my street. Although I've had this album for a number of years and it didn't click with me straight away. It's one of those ones I played, quite enjoyed, put on the shelf. And it probably wasn't until I started digging around for links to Edgewood that I rediscovered it and thought, actually, I've been missing something a bit special here. It's got a ton of ambition, big vocal harmonies. I suppose it's similar to bands like Ambrosia or perhaps Klaatu. So again, those bands both were heavily Beatles influenced, and this is much the same. And interesting, it features the cream of Memphis's musicians, really. There's a long list of musicians on here, and one of them is Jimmy Jameson on many of the vocals on here, and of course he turned up later in Survivor, and before that in a band called Target. And who else did he play for? Again, it'll come to me. But yeah, Jimmy Jameson's on here. Great vocalist. Yeah, does some superb work on here. Most songs sort of segue into one another, so it's kind of difficult to separate them and pick favourites. But it's just a really great, ambitious album with some stellar musicianship on. And again, one that seems to go very cheaply. Nobody seems to be picking up on this one yet, but it's definitely a grower. D Beaver. Now, the last couple of albums I'm going to show you I've kind of grouped together because I suppose they're stylistically similar. And the first of those is by Tiernan Nog. Presuming that's roughly how you pronounce it, and I guess that's a Celtic name. I did look up what that meant. I've completely forgotten what it was, so again, might stick it up there. This came out on Chrysalis Records in, God, maybe it says on there, but my eyesight is not picking that up. I'll show you the label, excuse to find out what the year was. So there you are, it's on that green Chrysalis label, and it is dated 1971 by the looks of it. This isn't the most pristine piece of vinyl, but it's a strong, very good plus. And there's no noise on here that overpowers the music, which is great stuff. It's sort of twin acoustic guitars, a couple of nice harmonising voices, some occasional tabla and cello and violin. And I guess it's one for fans of Nick Drake, Incredible String Band, Donovan, people like that. It's just a beautiful, haunting album. Some great melodies. It's mellow, it's transporting, and if that sounds like your bag, this is a really good example of that kind of music. And the final album I'm going to show you, again, has those kind of Incredible String Band, Donovan, Nick Drake kind of influences all over it. And that's Nick Castro and his, it's Nick Castro and the Poison Tree. And the album's called Further From Grace. And this is a beautiful album. I forget where I discovered this, but it was a case of it being cheap and taking a chance on it. And I'm so glad I did, because I keep coming back to this. It's just got such a beautiful, haunting feel to it again, much like that Tiernan Nog album, but perhaps it's darker sounding than that album. The track Waltz for a Little Bird as it would suggest, is in 3/4 time, and it's a mournful song with a trumpet or a flugelhorn in there, just adding to that melancholy feel. It's a beautiful piece of music. There's a lot of picked acoustic guitar on here, piano and organ, and I guess it definitely fits into that sort of acid folk category. The other highlight for me on here is probably music for Midwiz, which features a lot of Arabic percussion, which gives it a slightly different feel. So this and Tiernan Nog, if you're into that sort of folk acid folk kind of sound, that singer-songwriter sort of Nick Drake feel, you can't go far wrong with these. So there you go, that's my recent pickups and my heavy rotation platters for this week. I hope you saw something you liked. I hope you saw something you don't know, and that you go out and dig for them. Find some of these albums, because they deserve your attention. I won't promise to be back soon, because I just turn up when I've been listening to enough stuff and listening closely enough to have something to say about these albums. But I do hope to be back soon, and I look forward to your comments. So take care.